All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We'll begin with the matter of the state of Wisconsin versus Jesus Medrano III. May I have the appearances, please?
Your Honor, state appears by Mike Gravely of the District Attorney's Office.
Jesus Medrano III appears via Zoom with attorney Mary Kate Sickle, who also appears via Zoom today. We do not object to proceeding over Zoom.
All right, thank you. Then I'll begin with the court making a finding that good cause exists to hold not only this hearing, but any subsequent hearing this afternoon via the Zoom application, again, based on the coronavirus pandemic, as well as orders previously entered by the Supreme Court for the state of Wisconsin and the Circuit Court for Kenosha County, further barring any objections raised by defendants and/or defendants' counsel. All right, thank you. I believe we're here on a bond-only matter, and Mr. Gravely, state's position on this temporary bond?
That's correct, Your Honor. The defendant is at this point facing charges for 2 counts of first-degree homicide, a count of attempted first-degree sexual assault with a weapon, and a child abuse case based on strangulation, so a physical abuse of a child case. The allegations are that Mr. Medrano on January 6, 2021 has indicated to law enforcement, so has provided information to law enforcement that he intended to sexually assault a 15-year-old who was a family member of his in his residence. He prepared for that sexual assault by getting a sock that he planned to use if the 15-year-old in any way made any noise or resisted verbally the assault. He also brought a machete that he has owned and brought that, he told law enforcement, to be able to prevent anybody from stopping his assault. He proceeded into the room. He resided in a room next door to the 15-year-old victim. They have bunk beds in the room, so the assault that he planned and then started to pursue was an assault where his victim was in the bottom bunk, and a 10-year-old, also a relative of his, was in the top bunk in the very same room. The 15-year-old reports to law enforcement that she woke up to this relative of hers, who she knows well, on top of her. The only thing she remembers the defendant saying is to shut up, in other words, not to make any noise. She says as she began to try to somehow express a cry for help, that the defendant began to strangle her. She indicated he strangled her so hard that she urinated in her clothing, and she, according to the 10-year-old relative in the upper bunk, began to violently kick at the top bunk, sufficient that the 10-year-old began to cry out. That awoken the parents. This is a blended family, so these are parents who have brought differing children within this home into the marriage. First, the father arrives at the threshold of the room where this assault is actually taking place. When the father arrives, he asks or yells, "What is going on?" The defendant in this case tries to indicate that nothing is happening. The father does not believe that, and the defendant tells law enforcement as soon as he could see that the father did not believe it, he immediately stabbed him with that machete in the stomach. There's a very significant stab wound that I have seen on the body of Jesus Medrano Sr., or the second, so the father of this defendant. The defendant indicates as soon as he did that, he then cut with the machete again. That blow had the force that it nearly severed the arm of Mr. Medrano, the victim, who was then bleeding from both locations profusely. By this time, the mother, so the female victim, whose name is Latrice Myers Medrano, also came into the room. When she came into the room, Your Honor, the defendant indicates he jumped over the body of Jesus Medrano, who was bleeding, and he then stabbed her. He believed he stabbed her in the chest. In actuality, she was stabbed in the femoral artery, which caused her to bleed to death as well. Both these parents were screaming for their other kid, either that they were calling law enforcement or screaming for the other children, including the sexual assault victim, to flee the residence. 3 of the 4 remaining children jumped out of a window in a bedroom and ran across the street to the neighbor's home, where there was a disclosure made, and that neighbor is the one who called 911. The 2 parents who bled to death barricaded themselves in their bedroom. They indicated that they were going to call 911, and the defendant then fled the residence. He ran to another relative's home about 4 blocks away. A short distance from there, he was intercepted by a uniformed officer who saw him with the machete still in his hand, and the officer describes him as covered in blood. The defendant attempted at that time to get the officer to shoot him. The officer did not do that and was able to place him under arrest. And so at that point, the defendant was apprehended very shortly after this incident. The children involved, Your Honor, have been interviewed by law enforcement. There is a 6-year-old child who did not escape from the residence, who witnessed the vast majority of what I just described and had to describe that to law enforcement yesterday. Your Honor, I'm not sure that that I have been in a more heartbreaking scene than this particular residence, or been a party to more heartbreaking reports from the surviving children in this case. Some, at least one of whom is literally orphaned by the offenses that I've described. I'm not aware of any priors for this 24-year-old defendant. I do know that during the interview, he indicated that he had previously resided for a substantial period of time in Mississippi, and that he had been in juvenile corrections in Mississippi, but I have not been able to verify that currently, so I hope to be able to do that shortly. But I'm not aware of any adult record. I'm aware that he was employed at the time this incident occurred at a retail store as a stalker. He was living at this residence. The 6-year-old I mentioned, I believe, is his daughter. So he had a child who was living with him in the residence with essentially his father and stepmother at the time, who are now the 2 deceased victims. Your Honor, based on the premeditated aspect of a sexual assault, where one actually has told law enforcement that they brought a sock and a machete to be sure they could accomplish it, and in fact carried out the plan on what would occur if this was interrupted or in some way someone tried to prevent it. I believe that there's a significant amount of premeditation here, and would suggest that because of the sexual assault aspect, as well as the strangulation, which was significant in this case, as I indicated, I am requesting the court to order a $2.5 million bond in this case. Would ask for no contact with any of the children, the minor children in that residence. I can give the court those initials in a moment, but would ask for no contact with any of the minor children in this case, obviously no weapons as well. And Judge, Your Honor, I am confident, based on the progress in this investigation, that if the court wishes, we'd be available to do an initial appearance tomorrow. I believe I can have a complaint prepared by 1 o'clock tomorrow.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gravely. Do you want to, or do you wish to give me those initials and dates of birth at this point?
Certainly can, Your Honor. So the initials are as follows. I-A-E, date of birth 3/22/05. J-M, date of birth 12/28/15. A-M-C, date of birth 11/12/06. And A MM, date of birth 2/18/2010.
All right, thank you very much. Ms. Sickle.
Thank you, Commissioner. At this time, we don't have the benefit of the criminal complaint to refer to, but what I can inform the court is that Mr. Medrano is 24 years old. He was born in the Kenosha area and lived here until he was a youth, and then he moved away for a while and has lived in the Kenosha area for about the last 8 years. He does have 2 brothers in the area. As the state noted, he works at a retail store. He was working at Walmart. And additionally, as the state noted, we aren't aware of any prior criminal record, and therefore we're not aware of any bail jumping charges or any failure to appear. Mr. Medrano is eligible for the public defender's office, and therefore he would not be able to pay a significant cash bond. We do understand the seriousness of the allegations facing Mr. Medrano, and therefore we're asking for a reasonable cash bond at this time. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Ms. Sickle. Well, the court's aware these are allegations. Nonetheless, let's be candid, these allegations are nothing short of grisly. The premeditated nature, the viciousness of this, both the sexual assault as alleged and the alleged then subsequent attack and activities or intentional activities, the issues involved as described in terms of the death of 2 individuals, again, is nothing short of extremely concerning, extremely vicious. And then you couple that with the exposure here for the charges that are anticipated with intentional first-degree homicide and intentional sexual assault child. These are, again, incredibly serious offenses carrying with them decades, well, in the case of the homicides, likelihood, again, only if conviction occurs, of course. I'm aware these are allegations of a lifetime of incarceration. Leads this court to believe that Mr. Medrano is an extreme flight risk based on these charges, based on the allegations. And as such, this court does believe that a very high cash bond is necessary to assure this defendant's appearance in court, and does set the cash bond at $2,500,000. In addition, non-monetary conditions, Mr. Medrano, are as follows. You're not to possess any weapons of any type. You're not to have any contact at any time for any reason through any means. And again, for any reason at all, including electronic contact with the following individuals. Initials IAE, date of birth 3/22/05. JM, date of birth 12/28/15. AMC, date of birth 11/12/06. AMM, date of birth 2/18/10. In the event that you are released, you must appear in court every time when required. No matter how unlikely it is, you'll be released. And you must not commit further crimes while out on bond. You understand all the conditions of bond and the bail amount, sir?
Yes. Yes,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir.
Coming back here then tomorrow, January 8th at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.